My name is Robert Chapman, and I am the Ward 3 Alderman for the City of Clinton, and this is the Board of Aldermen update from January the 2nd, 2024. We started the meeting off by hearing from former Representative Greg Harper and his associate Brett Bailey. Their firm lobbies for the city, particularly with the wastewater treatment project that we have going on for the next decade. They said with the turn of the calendar year, there are some deadlines that are approaching. The first thing they said to pay attention to is the continuing resolution that could possibly show up in D.C. at the end of the month. Congressman Harper said that that would not be a good thing for this project, so we are hoping that a continuing resolution does not occur in Washington, D.C. Congressman Harper briefly touched on the 80-20 project and said that it is moving along nicely. He specifically pointed out former Speaker Philip Gunn and his efforts to help with the city obtaining the money for the 80-20 project. Brett Bailey talked about the $7.7 million that are earmarked for the wastewater sewage project. He said for the fiscal year 24, the first filings are going to be around January the 19th, and the filings that impact us will be around February the 2nd. I just talked about the continuing resolution, and if that were to occur, that would happen in the middle to late January. Since our filing date is February the 2nd, we will know a little bit more as we get closer to that portion. Unashamedly, I am a massive fan of Greg Harper and Brett Bailey. They've gone way above and beyond their expectations. And so from the newbie on the team, I just want to say thank you both very much for all that you do. At the start of each board meeting, we hear from one of our directors around the city, and on the second, we heard from Chandra Broomfield, who is the Director of Therapeutic Recreation. She gave a little bit of an update about what happened in 2023 in her department, most notably the growth in participants and attendees. She's seeing growth in the Challenger League with 8 new participants, and is seeing continued growth in other activities that participate in visiting places around the state, but this year she says she's going to pay a little bit more attention to visiting places around the city. She also mentioned the increased focus that she will be dedicating towards the quarterly newsletter, as well as transitioning most correspondence digitally. She says she has several senior citizens who get emails, but she also has a good many who prefer to get their correspondence through snail mail. She said that the bill for postage can definitely add up, so she's going to see if she can maximize and utilize digital communication to save the city a little bit of money and to utilize that money in a more efficient way. They'll be bringing back their 21 days of health challenges for all participants, starting small by looking at healthy habits. Habits like walking and eating right, which is something that anyone of any age should certainly pay attention to and can definitely participate in. She closed up her time with us by telling us about the large number of events that are planned for the first quarter, and she has 32 participants signed up already. February will see the Sweetheart program, as well as a Mardi Gras and a Valentine's Day program. And at the end of January, some of her participants will visit Clinton High School's Culinary Arts program, where Clinton High School students will make a meal for them, and then they'll also get to share an intergenerational meal. We jumped into the voting by talking about Connect West. This is an economic development opportunity that the mayor and other businessmen have talked about and put together. The whole idea of having an economic developer work solely for the city is very contingent on who's in office, and sometimes different administrations can have leeway one way or another, particularly having a 4-year time limit. With this economic development program overseen by local businessmen who have buy-in, the economic development for the city takes priority, not necessarily who is in or who is not in office. The 501c3 and 501c6 have both been established and approved, so Connect West will begin shortly. The goal is to start small, but quick growth is expected to follow. To have a seat on the board of this Economic Development Authority, there's a $10,000 buy-in. For the city to have a voting position, we had to vote to approve that $10,000 purchase, an annual purchase. Next, the question will be who will sit on that board. I'm not necessarily sure who it will be, but I can tell you who it won't be. No elected official will be allowed to sit on the voting board for Connect West. Next, we heard from Police Chief Heyman, who has an arsenal of weapons that he is wanting to sell. It's just a small arsenal, and not the soccer team arsenal. But they put some firearms up for sale, and King's Firearms had the highest bid, so we approved those sales. Now, already that money is earmarked, and Lieutenant Kelly has several items on his watch list. So we moved into the approval voting for sound and flash suppressors for the Clinton SWAT team. They've got a nice collection of night vision goggles, and these sound and flash suppressors will work hand in hand with that night vision equipment. Before Chief Heyman left, the mayor wanted him to touch on some of the drone activity that his department has embarked upon. He said they started humbly with just 3 drones that were donated. They got the hang of them, knowing that if they messed one up, it wasn't too expensive and they could replace it. Recently, they have used these drones to keep police officers safe during certain pursuits, chasing criminals from neighboring cities. Chief Heyman pointed out that as technology grows, so should the ability of the force. We're very thankful for their service, very thankful for their abilities, and they make Clinton the wonderful, safe place that it is. Next, we moved from the police chief to the fire chief, and Chief Blackledge brought up to the board the approval of replacing the flooring in the dormitory part of Station 1. He said that Station 1 was built in 1998, and the floors and the carpets have not been changed since. I'm just going to leave it at that. This is a budgeted item that he had prepared for back in August, so it's wonderful that we're finally getting to move on it. He even said that the initial quote was higher than what it'll actually cost, so there's a little bit of savings in a budgeted item. Next, we moved on to the 2% money and what's happening over at Kidstown. We've been working with a company to come up with a master plan for that area that involves Kidstown Park, as well as new pickleball courts, and of course, restrooms. The master plan has been approved, so now we're trying to get down into the minutia. This means that we're moving into site plans and getting specs set in order so that we can get that out to bid. Speaking of bids, we moved on to approve a re-advertising process for the Parkway Plant Project. Parks and Rec Director Courtney Nunn told us that upon further investigation, they noticed that some of the plants were growing back. If you remember, we had a once-in-a-lifetime drought, and if the trees outside your house look anything like mine, you realize there's going to be some replacement coming up in the spring. The same thing is happening on the Parkway. But like Courtney said, they found some of the plants were not necessarily done for, and that there was a chance that they could grow back. Because of this, they're asking to re-advertise the project and only focus on the Parkway. Initially, they also included the interstate interchanges on I-20. So we approved this request unanimously. Next, you'll see another project in 2024 that the mayor is calling the Under the Bridge project. I keep thinking about the Red Hot Chili Peppers, but it has nothing to do with Anthony Kiedis or Flea. This project will focus on infrastructure that'll mostly be buried that you don't see, like drainage, but it's getting the location set up for some work that can be utilized under a $125,000 grant that was received by Tara Lytle. Next, we moved into voting on the relationship with WGK. We don't have a city engineer. We utilize WGK for city engineering purposes. We have a general professional service contract with them, and so moving into 2024, there was an adjustment in rates, and our Director of Public Works, Philip Lilly, requested an approval for that, so unanimously, we approved. The final three things that we voted on were items that were coming up in front of us that people were seeking either certificates of appropriateness or trying to make sure that they fall in line with different ordinances. I have an individual on Belmont Street that is wanting to build an accessory building, so they asked for the certificate of appropriateness there, making sure that the color matched and everything was approved on our end. Next was an architectural review. Top Shelf Wine and Spirits will be going in over on Highway 80. If you're familiar with the Obies location, to the far right of the building is where this Top Shelf Wine and Spirits will be going in. They'll still be utilizing 3 bays to the left, but because the building will be shifting in purpose, some architectural work was needing to be done. We had a little bit of discussion about what was appropriate and what would be preferred, hiding cinder blocks, making sure that the colors matched. And once we landed on an agreement, we voted to have that architectural review approved based off of what we agreed upon. Finally, we closed out the voting portion by approving the preliminary plat of a subdivision of 10 acres. This Bond Olson subdivision was 10 acres that is wanting to be split into 3 lots. Each lot will be mainly around 2.5 to 3 acres, so we approved that unanimously. It's always great to start the year off by filling positions, so we filled 6 positions within the city, 3 firefighters, 1 part-time code enforcement officer, 1 CDL driver for Public Works, and 1 heavy equipment driver for Public Works. I'm excited for 2024. It's going to be a great year. The city has a lot coming its way. If you see me out and about, please stop and say hello. Look out for each other. Take care of your neighbor. And as always, I appreciate your time. Happy New Year.